Pittsburgh Steeler fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com with you for another episode of the Steelers Preview. You know, I have to be honest with you all, the listeners, the viewers out there, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. We got a message from Mr. Bryan Anthony Davis earlier today, and he was suggesting changing the name of the Steelers Preview in the offseason. And, you know, we heard him out, and I understand it. But, Bryan, I want you to give the listeners out there a quick synopsis of the message that you actually sent. And you reference flapjacks, a Greg Lloyd jersey. Why don't you go ahead and outline that for the listeners? I feel like that would be a good, appropriate way to start the show.
Well, you know, normal people say, hey, let's throw it up against the wall and see if it sticks with an idea. And so my thought was, you know, we have the Steelers preview, and Dave does this every time in the offseason. He goes, what are we really previewing? But we end up previewing some stuff, and I'm like, you know, he might be right. So instead of the Steelers preview, should we call it the Steelers review or the Steelers view, just for the off season? And go ahead and change it. Yeah. So but I'm like, I don't think we really need yeah, that'd be awesome. I don't think we really need to change the name of the show, but I'm just throwing it out there. So it's kind of like you throw out a pickup line at 2 a.m. back in the day. You throw it out there and you just see what happens. You just see whose panties end up on your floor and who's cooking you flapjacks in your Greg Lloyd jersey the next morning and nothing else. So either way, you get flapjacks.
Sorry. When he sent that to us today on our Slack channel, I literally laughed out. I was like, oh my gosh, that's only something Bryan would say. Bryan, welcome to the show. Dave Schofield, the other co-editor. How's it going, Dave?
It's going. Now, I have to defend myself for something here. When I say, what are we previewing, it didn't mean that I felt like we didn't have anything to preview. I just wanted to know what we were talking about. So that way I could make an appropriate trivia question.
It's not a rip on you. It's just analysis, and that's what we kind of do here. Well, just for the same reason, we're changing the name of Know Your Enemy, because there's no reason to call it that until in September when we're talking about another game. So we're going to change the name of that temporarily in the off season. Just like last year, we changed the name of the Hangover to the Q&A, just because, I mean, what are we hungover about? So, you know, that's kind of what we're looking at here. Just trying to, you know, clean it up. That's just how my brain works. Do we need to tinker? Do we not need to tinker? You know.
No, we're always looking forward on this show, so we're previewing.
It was less about the changing of the name. It was more about the analogy used when he was offering it. Well, you know what? There's been a crap ton of news today. I mean, literally, it's just crazy. I feel like I would have it queued up, but the last time I played a song on YouTube, YouTube like gave us a strike and said you can't do that because it's copyrighted music. I feel like we should be playing Boys to Men. It's so hard to say goodbye right now. You know, Dave, if Dave and Bryan want to sing it, I mean, we could try. I mean, Dave, go.
Do you want to do that one, or do you want to do the one I sang earlier?
What were you gonna say?
I will remember you.
Yeah. Will you remember me? Randy Fichtner's gone, man. Randyland. See ya. He's out like
so
the log jammer.
To say goodbye to Randyland.
There you go. Randy Fichtner is gone. I'm sorry. People want to say his contract was not extended. He was fired. He was fired, period. It's just a nice way of saying thanks, but no thanks. You're fired. You're done. See you later. Dunzo, as I always call it. So he is gone. He's that's good. Getting done with both is not for Fichtner. We should be playing Beat It. I like that. He's out like the log jammer at Kennywood. Guys, there is going to be you get it. Okay. There's a lot of other news that we're going to get into. Don't worry. But we want to focus a lot on this Fichtner crap because he was a load of crap. And I was so sick and tired of him by the end of this season. Rarely ever do I say, like, this guy needs to go. But I was saying at the end of the season, this guy needs to go. Now, there's a ripple effect here. And that's the title of this episode in this podcast is what is the extent of this ripple effect? And it's, to me, it's lengthy because when you tie it in with some other news. So let's be honest, guys, I'll ask you real quick, yes or no. When you heard the news of Fichtner leaving after you rejoiced and said, thank you, Lord, did you immediately think they're just going to promote Matt Canada? Bryan, go.
Absolutely not. Everybody's been saying that. I'm the guy that thinks that they look outside the box, and I don't think they are looking to appease Ben Roethlisberger this time around. I think when they did that, when they brought Randy in 3 years ago, there was not even a search. They said, Todd Haley, you are not extended. Oh, by the way, Randy Fichtner's our new offensive coordinator, and we knew what that meant. This time around, with maybe 1 year of Ben Roethlisberger left, they're not looking into bringing a guy just to make Ben happy. And now with Canada maybe looking elsewhere, there could be someone else, and without any regard to Ben's feelings on this.
Dave, did you think it was going to be Canada? Yes or no?
You and I did a little breaking news podcast right after this happened. And that, if you haven't checked that out, that's on the audio feed. And what I said is, I think that was a high possibility that that's what the Steelers would do, but that's not what I would be in favor of. It looks like the Steelers may not even be able to keep Matt Canada at all. Apparently, he's interviewed for the OC job in Miami. Don't know if he'll get it or not. That still remains to be seen. But ultimately, I would like to keep Canada in the role that he's in and have some influence on things, but get somebody new, somebody different coming in. How that translates to one BTR, Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger, is very, very interesting, because does he really want to dive into having to do a big transition into a new OC? But it seems like the Steelers are like, you know what? We made these decisions for years with Ben in mind. It's no longer time to make those decisions with Ben in mind. We got to do what's best overall.
As they alluded to, Matt Canada was, I think it was today, or at least he was down in Florida today. He's interviewing with the Miami Dolphins for their vacant offensive coordinator position. And it does not mean that he's going to get that job. Steeler fans should know from Omar Khan, who's been, he has had interviews with the Texans as well as with help me out here, guys, the Carolina Panthers. Yes, the Carolina
and
Panthers.
Cracker Barrel, I think, too. I mean, he's interviewing everywhere.
And he hasn't gotten the job yet. So let's not put the cart before the horse here. But the fact is that Canada is viewed as kind of a commodity. And the Steelers are going to have to move quick if they think that they're just going to be able to keep him. So for once, I agree. Not for once, I agree with Dave, but for once since 2004, Ben Roethlisberger, and maybe you guys disagree with me, should have absolutely zero input on who they bring in. Because even if he comes back next season and collects his $40+ million,
well, counts as $40+ million.
Counts as 40
collects
plus.
$19 million.
That's yeah. Okay. Anyways, regardless of how much he actually puts into his bank account, the fact of the matter is that with Ben Roethlisberger, you have, I think, at most 1 year, and then you're gone. Then it's gone. And if Ben doesn't want to learn a new offense, then Ben, you're done. Or you can play somewhere else. Guys, you agree with me here, or you disagree? Bryan, what do you think?
I absolutely agree. You cannot make a decision for 53 players and a coaching staff and a fan base and an organization based on the wants and needs of one guy.
What about you, Dave? You agree?
Yeah, but I mean, he's only got 1 year left on his contract. This is almost like a pooper get off the pot moment that they're trying to say to one BTR, is that, hey, you're here for 1 more year, and that's all for now. Either you want to say, I'm going to come back for longer than this, or on a much more team-friendly deal where we can actually do something with the salary cap, or this might be the whole notion of he's really got to get in or he's really got to be done.
I think that, if Roethlisberger is saying right now, I can't believe they fired my guy, number one, they fired Randy. And I agree with Bryan. And I said this on my Let's Ride podcast on Wednesday. I agreed with Bryan when he said there was some they definitely were not seeing eye to eye 100% this past season. You could just tell from the media availability that they had. But on top of all that, the Steelers have to think long and hard about whoever they bring in. Let's be honest. This is not an attractive job. Not at all. I mean, besides the fact that you would be the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which, yeah, some might say, wow, that's a Steelers offensive coordinator. You don't have a really good shot at being promoted to like the head coach. The past few coordinators have been obviously ripped to shreds in the media and by the fan base. I don't think that ties into anything, but who's going to want to come and take a job where Ben Roethlisberger is if Ben Roethlisberger plays in 2021, that Ben Roethlisberger comes back and plays, and then maybe he's gone, and then you don't know who's going to be your quarterback. This, to me, not an attractive job. Bryan, do you think it's an attractive job for a potential offensive coordinator?
Yeah, it is for the right guy. If it's for a guy that is not looking to be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but maybe is in transition. I mean, you've seen guys like Jason Garrett just took a job last year with the New York Giants. He's looking to get some experience. Again, not experience, but he's looking to get his coaching mojo and his resume back up to be attractive to be a head coach again. I keep on thinking of a guy like Anthony Lynn from the Chargers, very good offensive coordinator. He would be a perfect fit for this team to come in. He's a guy that is a head coach, wants to be a head coach again. He's been around. He's had success in a lot of places with offenses. I think he's versatile enough as well. So I actually think that the offense that they ran last year in I was going to say San Diego, in Los Angeles is that kind of offense that he is adaptable. You saw what Justin Herbert was able to do there. He kind of reminds me a little bit of a young Ben Roethlisberger in a way, with his size and just altogether, just watching this guy. I kind of think you bring a guy in like that and say, hey, you're here to audition for another team. We might have you for 2 years, but we might be able to get some success out of you.
Dave, do you think it's an attractive job?
I think it can be if you look at it this way. Okay, first of all, I do want to say that I feel like the Steelers, even in both coordinator spots, have had success in the past of taking people that were head coaches and didn't cut it as head coaches to have them come back to be coordinators or other positions. They've done that before. I mean, think about that. That was Dick LeBeau. That was Todd Haley. That was even Mike Munchak. Okay. That kind of situation. I just don't know that that's what they're going to do this year. I think it was Thaddeus that said it in the live chat. Another thing that's attractive, the Steelers don't really fire coaches. They just let you get to the end of your contract and not bring you back. So if you sign a contract, there's a good chance that you're going to be there for that time, unless you get promoted somewhere else, to where you can do that. Here's what I think is interesting. What was the problem with the Steelers' offense last year, as much as anything? It was the run game. It was the offensive line being able to block and have a successful run game. So if you come in and you know that you have these, even if Juju doesn't come back, that you still have these other quality wide receivers, maybe Ben Roethlisberger, maybe not, but know that you can you have some other coaching positions available there as well. They have an offensive line coach. They have a tight end coach. If you think you can bring the right people with you to revamp that run game, what was missing from the Steelers, and you already have a pretty successful passing game, especially if you have time to throw the ball, then that could be attractive by being able to implement some of your own people as well.
It's a good point. And, I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's crazy to me, at least, how a lot of these teams are they're pulling the trigger quickly on these coaching hires. And maybe it's because many of these interviews are not happening face-to-face. They're all just being done virtually, and they're able to have them a lot faster and answer the questions. I'm not sure. But guys, how fast do you think, let's say over under Monday morning, the Steelers hire a new offensive coordinator? Bryan, before or after? Same thing, over under.
I think after.
Wow.
I think it's going to take, I think there's going to be a little bit of a search unless they want Matt Canada. If they want Matt Canada, they'll make him an offer. They'll say, you don't go to Miami. We have plans for you here. then you're going to hear something. If that doesn't happen, I think later.
Dave?
Bryan is exactly spot on with this. If it's someone from within, it will be quick. If it's not, it will take time. My vote is we might be able to talk about it next Thursday, but there's a decent chance that we won't.
Okay, so let's, for the sake of argument or debate, let's just say that it's not Matt Canada. He's not their guy. He's not where they want to go. If he wants to stay as the quarterback coach, they're more than willing to have him. They just don't want him as the offensive coordinator. If you could handpick someone that is available, now Bryan already said Anthony Lynn, I'm going to ask him to think of someone else, that you would want to potentially come in and be the coordinator. Dave, will start with you to give Bryan a chance to think about it. Dave, who do you think? Who would you want?
That's tough because I like the whole idea of Anthony Lynn. Michael Beck has a whole list. He's got it ready to go. Here's an intriguing one that Steelers Nation is not going to like, because I think it would be a lot like a Todd Haley move. Is Adam Gase?
Oh boy,
he was not a good head coach, but he was a good offensive coordinator. I just don't know that he fits with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Would you say that Todd Haley was a good coordinator?
I would say he was a good offensive mind. I don't know that, to me, to be a coordinator, you have to, how do you say it? You kind of want to have your players believe in what you're doing. And he was so abrasive that they didn't believe in him as a person, I believe.
Okay. No, that's fine. Bryan, anyone other than Anthony Lynn that you would be interested in having the Steelers bring in as the offensive coordinator?
Yeah, I'm thinking of two guys. Brian Schottenheimer is one of those guys that, I know, there's a lot. He got fired because the Seahawks had problems down the stretch as far as offense. But, I really think Schottenheimer is a good young mind there. Hey, I am not completely opposed to what Dave just said with Adam Gase. And here's one that, gosh, it's kind of a ho-hum one, but Jim Caldwell has always been a really good offensive coordinator, better than a head coach. He took a team to the Super Bowl as a head coach. Of course, a lot of people said that was Tony Dungy's team. He still did it. But, Jim Caldwell, when he was brought in late in the game in 2012 to coach the Ravens, all of a sudden they caught fire as the offensive coordinator there when they got rid of Cam Cameron, and they but they won the Super Bowl. Caldwell could be that kind of guy that's not a hot, sexy pick, but it's a solid pick.
Yeah,
I was going to say Schottenheimer. That was the guy that I was thinking.
Isn't he Randy Fichtner West Coast?
Is he really?
Fizzled down the stretch, got fired because he couldn't get any kind of semblance of a running game. Was accused of wasting good years of Russell Wilson. Isn't that kind of,
I don't know,
the same, just a few years younger? That's the biggest knock on him. But then that also wouldn't surprise me if it was kind of similar that the Steelers returned to.
Now, that's the last question about Fichtner, and then I'll see if you guys have any closing comments before we move on to the other news. Is this the straw that decides Ben Roethlisberger's future? In your opinion, is this the news that Ben's like, I'm not doing this? If it's not Matt Canada, who I have 1 year familiarity with, he knows the system, he knows what I like and what I don't like. If it's not him, I'm done. Do you think that's the case, Bryan?
No, because that's just being stubborn at that point. When you do have all that money, you have the desire to return, and you're not going to do it because you're not getting your way. I think that's foolish. It could be. I'm not saying that Ben won't do that. I just think that would be ill-advised.
Dave, what do you think?
Who's to say that they already don't have an idea what's going on with Ben? Maybe this is foreshadowing to what might be the story with Ben. I don't know. I don't know that he's ready to ride off into the sunset, but maybe this isn't. When was it that I said it? Was it in the post-game show that I said, hey, if you really want Ben to move along, you could just cut Pouncey and he might just go. The other option that I had said was, well, I didn't say, but I was thinking, get rid of all the coaches that Ben likes and not ask him anything about the hiring of the new ones. That's kind of the thing to do. Ben Roethlisberger has done so much for this franchise, but he's not the future anymore. I mean, you're lucky to get another season. And after each season, you're lucky to get one more. You can't make a decision right now. If you're going to change coordinators, you can't do this thinking that it's just this year. It's got to be for the future. So this is not with Ben Roethlisberger in mind.
You know, Ryan O'Toole, I'll put this on the screen. He brings up a good point. Maybe Ben's happy to see Randy gone.
It's true. We don't know.
The honeymoon phase for those two could have been over. And he's like, look, this isn't working. Like, we got to figure something out. Because honestly, I don't think if Ben Roethlisberger is smart, and I'm not saying that he is, you don't want to throw the ball 68 times in a game. Not at that age. I mean, you want to be able to run the ball at least a little bit to take some pressure off of you. That's how people have had success in the past when they get up in age. He'll be 39 next year. Bryan, did you have something else to say?
No, but I am seeing a lot in the live chat of some people are saying, hey, they're agreeing that you can't let Ben with maybe 1 year left make the decisions like we mentioned earlier. And some people said, hey, Ben runs the show here. I think you've got to take back the show and remind everybody that this is the Pittsburgh Steelers. This isn't the Ben Roethlisberger Football Club.
Yeah. So final thoughts on Fichtner before we move on. Dave, we'll start with you. Anything to add?
When we say we're really happy to see him go, this has nothing to do, at least I'm saying this, with the man personally. I felt that he was a decent quarterbacks coach when he was doing that. I just did not think he was the right person to be an offensive coordinator. He could be a super great guy. I don't want to speak ill of the man as a person, but he did not get the job done, in my opinion. I felt that things were too predictable. This was one of those things that I was saying Mike Tomlin needs to take control of his team and do what he has to do. I was saying this when they were having their losing streak, after the winning streak, in order to get back on track. If he had to, kick Randy in gear to whatever he had to do. And this is when it's all said and done. I'm really glad that when he said yesterday, Coach Tomlin, that, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is the definition of insanity, that they weren't rolling into this offseason doing just the same old thing. I love that they're shaking it up. I think that was the right move. Now all you can do is hope that now with Dan being gone, Dan Rooney, that really the front office can really get to make these good decisions and get a good person in there. That's what we hope for.
I will say this, because you brought up Randy as a person.
Mm-hmm.
For those that want my take on that, check out my Let's Ride podcast Friday morning.
Okay.
It's at the end. It's my little heart-to-heart segment I do at the end of every Friday podcast. I do kind of go off on a rant, so be prepared. Not saying Randy's a bad guy. Just be prepared. Bryan, final thoughts on Fichtner before we move on.
First of all, anytime I get a Jeff rant, it is the most awesome thing in the world. You get rants from me all the time, but a Jeff rant is awesome. So
I had one on the Nickelodeon game the other day. Check that one out. I went off about the Nickelodeon game.
I don't blame you.
I want to bring that up with you guys later. I'm going to write that down. We're going to talk about that game.
Let me give you two names here, and these aren't candidates, so don't get all bent out of shape when I say this. But when you hear the names Norv Turner and Wade Phillips, what do you think of? Great coordinators, awful head coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, and I would like to comment on what Dave said and commend him for what he said. Yeah. Randy was a very good quarterbacks coach. He was here for a long time, did a lot of great things, but he was the wrong guy to be put in that position. In fact, nobody did him any favors putting him in that position. Ben wanted him. That's why he got it. And then it kind of unraveled. He got exposed when Ben was gone, and it snowballed. It was even worse when Ben came back, because then there became some friction based on who's running the plays. Hey, in Dallas, I'm writing up plays in the dirt. Randy's like, no, you didn't. But when things go wrong, oh, that's all Ben. Ben's doing all that. So yeah, it got ugly at the end. He was in the wrong position for his skill set. He is a very good coach, and I have no problem with it. I'm sure he's a wonderful guy. But after what happened last year, when I saw how he was throwing Mason Rudolph under the bus at certain times, if you're a fan of the show, you remember 4 words from me, and that's no soda for you. And that was the whole rant that I went on. And the no soda for you rant was, he's the kind of guy I'm sure I'd love to have a soda with and, talk to. But I was so angry with the way he was treating his young quarterback, and it seemed selfish and, very scapegoatish. So no soda for you. I wish you luck in your future endeavors. No one wants to see anybody get fired. I hope I don't get fired. And I'd feel bad for me if I got fired. Some people would be glad that I got fired from this position. That would be fine. But you know what? As a man, I wish you all the luck in the world, but just not as an offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
There you go. So let's talk about some of the other changes that happened. We'll stick to the offensive side of the ball, then we'll take a break and we'll come back. We'll talk about some changes that could be happening on the defensive side in terms of coaching staff, mind you, not players. So along with Fichtner, 2 other coaches were said, thanks, but no thanks. You're fired. We're not giving you new contracts. Shaun Sarrett, the offensive line coach, was the next one we're going to talk about. Old Sweet Feet, as James Harrison once called him, because they played together in the MAC, little Maction. So Seret, Dave, how many years was he the offensive line? 3 years? He had 3 seasons.
Well, when did
Munchak leave, Bryan?
Munchak left. It's 2
18.
seasons, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
so 2
he
seasons.
left.
So he is. Go ahead.
Yeah, this was Randy's 3rd season.
Okay, so Seret, guess he gets a good chance. A lot of people were saying that they liked this move because the Steelers' run game was so bad. But a lot of people on Twitter that know a lot more about football than I do were saying how that it's not like some offensive linemen have not been developed. They talked about how Chuks Okorafor came in, and Chuks Okorafor was kind of thought of as a bust, and he played well this season. Yeah, he had his moments, but then again, so do all offensive linemen. Talked about Dotson being able to step in and play right away, and Dotson was pretty rough around the edges in pass blocking, and that's what he did so well in the NFL. He was graded as one of the best pass blockers amongst the rookie linemen. So, guys, when you heard about Seret he's not getting a new contract, he's fired. What were your thoughts? Bryan, we'll start with you.
First of all, I am wrong. I was mixing up the whole Randy thing and Munchak leaving. Munchak left after the 2018 season, so Seret came in 19 and was here in 20. So I apologize for that. My thoughts on Seret is basically it goes back to Mike Munchak, because Mike Munchak was the run game coordinator too. And so when he left, everybody said, hey, we've worked with these guys. Suret's worked with these guys a whole lot. Dave and I had discussions on shows, and to that point that he should be able to come right in and keep on going, especially with the experience on that offensive line. You had 3 Pro Bowlers. Things kind of went south. I don't know whether it was all scheme. I don't know whether it was injury. I don't know what happened. That was just one of the, when you looked at 2 positions that glaring as far as coaches go, glaring position groups that were not getting it done. It was the offensive coordinator's job as a whole, and it was the offensive line that we talked about every single week, especially when we did the grades. Now, as far as pass protection, most of the year did great, but the running game wasn't there. So when I say it goes back to Mike Munchak leaving, it's because he was the run coordinator and they lost a lot of that too, and Seret could not do that. So I think that was kind of the death knell for him, especially with the way things went down the stretch with no running game and the fact that the offensive line was starting to really show a lot of chinks.
Okay, Dave,
in the armor.
Yeah. Well, I knew what you meant. Dave, when you heard about Seret, what was your take?
Sorry, I'm trying to think of what the need for Bryan to put that in there. Okay, I was the one who said when Munchak left that it was going to be Seret. I knew it was going to, and I mentioned to Jeff earlier. What was it, like 3 hours after he left? They hired him.
Yeah.
And I said the one thing the Steelers couldn't afford to do was to lose both of them, because people, I don't know if they realized that Seret predates Munchak. He actually, before Munchak came in, he was like the assistant he wasn't the official. They didn't give him the title of assistant offensive line coach until Munchak's last year. He was just an offensive assistant because they just didn't call him that. But he was the de facto offensive line coach for part of the season before they brought Munchak in because they demoted the guy that was there before. I thought it was, just a youth movement. Was he the next big thing? Worked with Munchak, everything else. You don't want to lose this guy. He could be the next big thing. And you know what? Apparently he wasn't, because the Steelers didn't believe in him to bring him back. Personally, I was having a problem with the blocking philosophy. And I've said, when it comes to the run game, that basically they had their offensive linemen standing tall and turning guys. And I've seen this in my past coaching of the philosophy of not driving guys off the line. Your job is to engage and get them turned away from the play. And I'm not a big fan of that, because you never got any kind of movement of the line of scrimmage and things. I didn't like the philosophy behind the run blocking. I assume that was Seret. And if that's the case, then I understand why they let him go. They did have another assistant offensive line coach this past year. Was it Adrian Clem? I'm pretty sure is who that was. I don't know if he's a candidate for the job. I don't know if it was one of those things that, maybe they liked him more than Seret, or if they're going to be looking from outside. Once again, I'd like to see someone come in with a new philosophy, because I think that's part of what's going on with the Steelers right now. They're getting recycled philosophy by constantly keeping the same people in there. So maybe he didn't have the right people. Maybe it was the aging offensive line with all the guys over 30, or, maybe he did do some great work with Dotson. Maybe it was the assistant offensive line coach that did all the great work with someone like Dotson. I don't know. All I know is that the Steelers, who have much more inside knowledge about the subject than what I do, made this decision.
Now, Dave, let me ask you a quick question before we take our first break. You said that you didn't like the running scheme, the blocking scheme.
Yeah.
Is that typically the coordinator, or is that typically the offensive line coach that does that?
That's a really good question that I don't know that I necessarily have the answer to. It should be a combination. I don't know who was pulling more weight. Was it that the offensive line coach was saying, this is how we can block it for you? Or was it the coordinator saying, this is how I want you to block it? I don't know what goes on behind closed doors. It could have been either one.
Okay.
Let's just say this. If it was Mike Munchak, I can guarantee that that Randy Fichtner wasn't going to be telling him the way he wanted things done. And who knows? Maybe that's what happened and why Munchak left. Maybe Fichtner wanted things blocked with a certain style and Munchak knew it wouldn't work and left. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I can't say for sure, but
okay.
Never know.
All right, so if you're on our audio platform, you're going to head over to part 2. We're going to take a quick break. If you're watching live on Facebook or on YouTube, don't go anywhere, because we won't go anywhere. And when we come back, we'll talk about some defensive changes as well as a retirement on the coaching staff. We'll be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to the Steelers Preview. I'm Jeff Hartman, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, joined with Bryan Anthony Davis, our podcast producer, and other co-editor, Dave Schofield. We just spent an entire 30-plus minutes talking about Fichtner and Seret and Matt Canada. And so before we get into the defensive side, I did want to mention and ask you guys if it matters, really. It matters a little bit. James Daniels, who's been a tight ends coach for the Steelers for well over a decade, has announced that he's retiring. So it's yet another coach that the Steelers are going to have to fill that position. Big deal or not a big deal? Bryan, we'll start with you.
Actually, you cut out for a second, Jeff, and I apologize. I did not hear the beginning of that part. And I don't want to throw out a Seattle.
That's fine. James Daniel, the tight end coach, has retired. And so therefore they are going to have to fill that position. Is that a big deal?
It's not, because that's a position that I think that's a position that you can go ahead and fill. I don't think you're going to lose too much out of that, because it's not responsible for scheme as much as getting the players ready. So I'm not too concerned about about James Daniel leaving. I thought he did a pretty good job for all the years that he was here. He was here since 2004. He had some very good tight ends in that day. Well, mainly Heath Miller, but he took guys like Matt Spaeth and made them work on this team. He took guys like David Johnson and made things work. Wesley Saunders for a little bit. Those guys that were not big names made them work, and he was very good about getting guys to block and do those little things that need to be done. I mean, he had guys like Tooman and guys like Remersma that they're not huge names, but he had good success with. I think you could replicate that, though.
Okay, Dave, what are your thoughts on Daniel retiring?
I think Bryan said it pretty well. He had been around. I mean, his first year with the Steelers was Ben's first year with the Steelers. So he's been here a long time, and maybe just with all the changes, it was time for him to go. But like I said, this is just one more position that if you're going to be looking for an offensive coordinator to say, hey, we have some spots open if you have the right people to help do what you want to do. And I think that'll be important moving forward. With Daniel gone, what's crazy is what all their offensive coaches, that actually have a position assigned to them have been here no more than 2 years. So It's really a big changeover.
Well, let's remember this too, is that from 2019, 2020, all the Steelers did was add coaches. That's when they added Matt Canada. They brought in Ike Hilliard. They did not get rid of anyone. And now they're looking at a significant amount of turnover in their coaching staff. Let's talk about Tom Bradley. He was a former UCLA, former Penn State coach. They brought him from the college ranks up to the NFL. He's been here, I don't know how many years, like 3 or 4, I think. He is the secondary coach. He gets fired. And so everyone's thinking, Terrell Austin, who's the defensive specialist, the assistant coach for the defense, he's done a good job since he's come over from Cincinnati. He is interviewing with the Tennessee Titans and for that defensive coordinator position that's available down in Tennessee and Nashville. This is quite the conundrum for me. If I'm the Steelers, I need to keep Austin. I want to keep Austin. You need him because as Steel Dog 88 puts $2 in the tip jar, he says it's 2021 Keith Butler's last. I'm hearing year to year. That's more news that broke today was that Keith Butler has reportedly going to be staying, but he's going to be on a year-to-year basis. So, guys, real quick, I mean, we can talk about Bradley, Austin, or Butler all on the defensive side. Bryan, what are your thoughts?
This is a real tough one for me as far as Bradley goes, but I got to go back to the fact that before Terrell Austin got here, that secondary was in complete shambles, and Bradley was a part of that. Before Austin, it might have only been one season where you thought he was going to come in and clean things up, and it actually got worse. So I think Austin made things better coming in. So I'm wondering if that's what they're looking at when they made this decision to get rid of him, with knowing that you have one guy that is year to year in Keith Butler, knowing that Terrell Austin might be your future defensive coordinator, or he might be a guy that's somewhere else, like we just heard. So I'm not sure exactly what went on here in this situation, but I keep going back to the fact that when he was here by himself, and that doesn't include Butler, but without Austin, he was bad. So I guess that's what happened.
Dave, what are your thoughts on the defensive side of the football?
Yeah, when they brought in Austin, I almost thought that was a little bit of a writing on the wall. We thought that maybe Bradley might have been gone sooner. Yeah. We're like, was this one of these deals where he wasn't working it, so they bring in an extra person to kind of basically do his job and phase him out? I would just be surprised if it took him that long to do that. I don't know if that's exactly what happened or not. To me, Terrell Austin is – I don't want to see him go into the defensive coordinator role because, in my opinion, he's a Keith Butler. He's the kind of coach that is a much better position coach than he is a coordinator. Much like even like Randy Fichtner, just like some coordinators don't make good head coaches, some position coaches don't make the best coordinators. And he was not good when he was in Cincinnati. So if he goes, I understand. But to me, I think where he would thrive the best is staying as the secondaries coach in Pittsburgh. I think that's just the obvious move if he doesn't move up to something else.
Now, to me, the news here, I want to keep Austin, as I said. The news here was also Butler getting a year-to-year contract. I think that's a really smart move by the Steelers. It gives Butler the flexibility if he wants to just hang it up. He doesn't have a contract over his head. We've heard that from Kevin Colbert as well. We'll talk about him in a second. But ultimately, I think it was a smart move. And also, if it's not playing out, as people are pointing out in the live chat, the last 3 playoff losses have been really, really bad defense. So even though the regular season stats have been great, in the postseason, they have not been, and that's what Dave talked about on his Stat Geek this Thursday morning. If you check it out, I mean, he really talks about how the regular season success has not mirrored itself in the postseason. So, Dave, we'll start with you. Did you like Butler coming back on a year-to-year basis, or did you think they were going to do something different?
I said before, replacing both coordinators in the same year with the same head coach, that seems like a tall task. So if I had to pick one to stay, I was picking Butler to stay. I think the year-to-year tells him, hey, we just don't renew contracts. We're only giving you a year. So this is kind of like keep it together for a year and then you can have another year. I don't think this is as much about Butler as it is about the Steelers, and I really like the move.
Bryan, thoughts?
I think Dave hit it on the head. I have no problem with them keeping Butler. I really like when they made that move to keep him as the defensive coordinator, but also let Joey Porter go and let Butler work with the outside linebackers. And they got back to what they did well when you had guys like Porter playing, when you had Debo and Lamar Woodley and Clark Higgins. That was the guy that was the genius behind that with the outside linebackers. He really helped guys like Bud Dupree get better and he made Bud Dupree great again when Bud wasn't under Joey Porter. So he had a lot to do with that. But as a defensive coordinator, I thought he still did well too. With everything that was going, that I really don't think with the year that they had on defense that you just take this guy and say, go away. But the year-to-year thing works for me as well. You're on notice.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the seat's probably getting a little hotter, and that's fine. Sometimes that can be a really good thing for a coach in terms of motivation. But think about this. If Austin were to go to Tennessee and Canada goes to Miami, the Steelers would have to replace 6 coaches. And that's if they fill all those positions, because let's not forget, Matt Canada took a quarterbacks coach. There was no quarterbacks coach there for as long as Randy Fichtner took over as offensive coordinator.
He was the slash. He was the quarterback coach slash offensive coordinator.
Right. So if they fill all those positions, and they're going to have to fill the secondary coach, but that doesn't mean they're going to replace Austin's role. So we don't know, but 6 potential coaches, that's a lot of turnover, as I said earlier, with this coaching staff. Something I have never seen this many coaches need to be replaced in the Mike Tomlin era. If you guys can remember a time, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never seen Mike Tomlin, have to replace 6 coaches in an offseason, and one of them being a coordinator at that. So real quick, before we get on to some other stuff like divisional round picks, even though the Steelers aren't playing, we're going to pick those games for you. Kevin Colbert, this stupid rumor, goodness gracious, how this thing got legs, I have no idea. There was, and Bryan, I think Bleacher Report, you sent it out on our Slack channel, there were rumors of Kevin Colbert being lured away from Pittsburgh to Detroit, the Lions. Now, I didn't know this, Dave. You said that he was with the Lions before he came to Pittsburgh. I was not aware of that. How many years was he there?
1999. He was their head of scouting or something?
Yes.
I don't know. Okay. Well, that's news to me. So anyways, it turns out to be a BS rumor. It's a bunch of malarkey, not Mike. It was just a bunch of BS. And so was there any validity, or did you ever think to yourself, maybe Colbert is going to be gone, Bryan?
I didn't really think so. And I thought it was a situation that if he went, that they were going to go ahead and move Omar Khan into that situation. And if he was really wanting to leave, but he has a lot invested here in Pittsburgh. I can't see him going to a place like Detroit, which, chews people up. We saw choose GMs up, choose a lot of executives, coaches up like crazy. And I just really didn't see that happening at all when this guy is year to year, because he is at the point in his life and career that he's ready to hang it up and he's going to go out on his own terms. Don't see him starting over.
I agree. Dave, what are your thoughts on that rumor?
Yeah, wasn't there also something about his son being involved, or
I think at one point I heard that. I swear it started with some radio personality in Detroit that had a source, and next thing you know, like 93.7 The Fan in Pittsburgh's talking about it, and this thing just starts getting legs like crazy. And it turns out it was all literally the guy that started it actually came out and said I was wrong. Like I blew it. So
he said he had a source, but
yeah.
He said it was way off. But I'm wondering if there was really something going on in the front office, and there is something with his son, but not even as the GM, and because of the name or whatever, it got misconstrued. I don't know what that was. I can't even remember what it was about the whole thing with his son. But it's very interesting because everyone's like, yeah, and they're offering him a deal. We're like, then Detroit's going to be in trouble for tampering because they can't talk to him. He's under contract through the draft. So yeah, that was interesting.
I called BS on that from the moment someone sent it in the Slack channel. I'm like, that's not true. Like, that's literally a bunch of BS. Like, that's not happening. So anyways, I just want to get your all's take on that. While we're talking about this, before we go to our picks, bold predictions, and trivia, I want to get your all's take on the Nickelodeon game. So last week, if you saw it, the Saints and Bears game was also simulcast on, was it on Nickelodeon?
Yes.
And they had like the slime zone, and they had SpongeBob's face in between field goal posts and whatever. I was on Twitter and I saw a clip of this, and so I quote tweeted it and said, the NFL has got to be, this is embarrassing. And you would have thought that I was calling each and every person that has a Twitter account that I was calling their mom something very, very bad. They're like, how dare you say this, blah, blah, blah. Before I give you my take, and if you listen to my Let's Ride, you know my take, but still, I want to get your all's take because you all have children. I have children. On this game, I did not watch a second. I just saw the Twitter video, which showed a lot of the stuff that they were doing. Brian, we'll start with you. What was your take on the Nickelodeon game?
First and foremost, I did not watch the game, and the reason I didn't watch it is because the Chicago Bears were involved, and I knew it was going to be a boring game. Seriously, I might have watched a second of it. I did what you did. I watched the highlights. I saw the slime zone, and there was a woman commentator just go, "Wow, the slime!" And she was like, "Wow!" Like it was like this great thing because you had this graphic, and they had the line of scrimmage moving. It was like green and purple, and they had the graphics they had, and they actually did slime Sean Payton at the end. They were going to slime the winning coach, and they did. I watched the video of him getting slimed. He got a bucket of slime on his head. When I told my daughter, who is 11 years old, about this, she kept on asking, who's going to get slimed? Did he get slimed yet? Is Mike Tomlin going to get slimed if they win? Who's getting slimed? When's Mike Tomlin getting slimed? I'm like, Mike Tomlin, it's not that game. Okay, but she kept the next day, who got slimed? That's all she wanted. She actually wanted to watch football because of it, and that's why the NFL wanted to bring in younger viewers. I just think to do that in the playoffs is really crazy. That's that you don't need gimmicks in the playoffs. Here's the thing. When you go to a Pittsburgh Steelers game, Dave, you're the person to ask this. How many times have you walked through the turnstiles at Heinz Field and they gave you a bobblehead? How many times did they give you any kind of item?
About half the time.
Okay, Dave, you just ruined it for me because
you want to know the truth? Like they give out pink terrible towels in October, and things like that. Yeah, they give out stuff at Heinz Field.
Okay, I thought it was like
they give you a little scratch.
He totally ruined the punchline of his.
I know, but I have to be honest.
I thought that was Steeler Nation Unite that did that stuff, but I thought
Steelers Nation Unite's always doing promo stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and that's Steeler, but I'm talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers organization.
Who's handing it to me? They're handing me a free pink terrible towel.
Yeah,
but one and the same. Anyways, Anyway,
but what my point is, when you look at the Pirates schedule every year, they've got all these. I mean, almost every night it's some kind of promotion to get people to walk through the door. You don't need gimmicks in the NFL. You shouldn't need gimmicks. I know viewership has gone down, but to go ahead and throw SpongeBob between the uprights and slime a coach, can you imagine Belichick getting slimed? Oh my gosh, he wouldn't agree to do it. I mean, that would have blown up in their face. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to me.
Dave, what's your take on the Nickelodeon game?
Okay, well, I was watching that game somewhat downstairs in my setup where I do go for Steelers games. Was trying a different TV setup, things like that. Needed to go upstairs and make dinner quick because I was getting ready for the Steelers game. I said, I want to turn on the football game. I said, you know what? The kids are here. Turn it on Nickelodeon. And they're like, what? And I said, just do it since they're there. And I wanted to get an idea what it was. And I didn't need these gimmicks when I was a boy. Back in my day when I walked uphill to school both ways in the snow, even than me. But you want to know what? I didn't need it either, because you know what I did on Sunday? We had one TV and it was on football. That's not how it works now. Everyone's on their devices doing
I only have one TV, Dave.
But I'm just saying, between the smartphones and the tablets and the 6 TVs in the house and everything, it's not the same. It's just the way our society is. We all don't gather around and watch something together nearly as much as we used to. That's a big deal in my family when we do, and we try to do it when we can. That was anytime the TV was on for me growing up. So it's a different world from when we were kids because of all of this added stuff. And therefore, they're like, there are kids out there that they don't understand. And what were they doing? They were explaining how things work. I'm sitting there realizing whenever my son wants to learn stuff and I'm trying to explain to him how the game works, I like that they have the yellow line on there for the first down. When they first put that yellow line on there, how many people complained? Why are they bothering doing something like that? People just need to know what the sticks are. Pay attention to the game, blah, blah, blah. Now everyone's always looking at the yellow line. Okay. They did this to try to engage some younger viewers. They didn't do it for every game, and they didn't make you have to watch it. It was an extra channel, adding in, no harm, no foul. And if you just want to complain about it, you can go back to shouting at clouds.
I see. Here's the thing. And if you listen, Dave, I know you listen to Let's Ride. So I know Bryan didn't. If you listen to my rant,
know that.
You didn't. It's okay. But if you listen to my issue wasn't with the game, it was with the fact that the NFL had to do it. Why in the world? Okay, thank you, Thaddeus. Why in the world does the NFL? Because their demographic is going the wrong direction. The NBA is opposite. The NBA young people are flocking to the NBA like crazy. They love it. They love the trades. They love the big money. They love everything about it. The NFL, the demographic is not getting younger. And so I understand why the NFL did it. And I understand that I didn't have to watch it. I didn't. However, the question I have is the NFL's got to figure out, why can't they attract these kids without doing a slime zone, SpongeBob's fat face between field goal posts? That's the stuff that I want to know. Why is the NFL all of a sudden? Because guess what? As a kid, I didn't step foot in a stadium to watch a Steeler game until 2003. I never saw the Steelers at Three River Stadium. I didn't see them until Tommy Maddox and the 6-10 Steelers played the San Diego Chargers at Heinz Field. A guy from my church was giving away tickets and just said, here, take them. Great seats. They were horrible that season. It led to Ben Roethlisberger.
And that's when I went to my first game the next year.
So it was like, for me, all I did was watch them on TV. I never got to go, even though we were only an hour away. You just could never get tickets because, well, they were expensive and we didn't have a lot of money growing up. Still, I just don't understand where's the disconnect, from maybe it's the fact that, I grew up in an NFL where I loved watching on Monday Night Countdown, the jacked up segment. I thought it was great. The big hits, you hear guys go, you just got jacked up. Well, they don't let them do that anymore because they don't want to glorify the violence of football. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Maybe I fell in love with the fact that Joey Porter went on to a Baltimore Ravens bus and said, I'm going to fight the whole freaking team. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But to me, like, kids, I don't know how you don't like it. I mean, my kids love watching football with me, unless Dave's kids come over and they're distracting them.
Yeah,
but I mean, Like the playoff game, my kids, even my daughters that are young, they don't know what the heck they're watching, but they're up and they're asking questions and I'm explaining stuff to them. I don't understand why they have to do it. That's my thing. Like, don't care that they did it. I don't have to watch it, so that's fine. The Muppets, that's a different story. I didn't like that altogether because I had to watch that. But still, the NFL's got a problem on their hands. If they have to do that, that means that kids are not watching the product in its natural state, and that's a problem. They should be concerned. That's just my
Jeff. You got to get them to turn on the channel. And if they use a gimmick to, like Bryan says, if they use a gimmick to get you in the stadium, then you might fall in love with the players. You know, by giving them a bobblehead, you get them you get them.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Dave, but the question is, why do I need a gimmick to watch the game?
That's why you watched it.
No, I'm saying, like, even for kids, like my kids don't need slime zones to watch football. They like it just because I like it. They
watch that game until I turned that on because if it wasn't the Steelers, they weren't interested. So that's just how it was.
Here's my take on this. When we were growing up, whether it be the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, you had 3 networks. We didn't even get Fox until 1986. You didn't even get that network until then. There were only 3 networks. It was ABC. What's that?
It was Channel 8.
I didn't hear you, Dave.
Yeah. I remember.
I actually worked for them. But ABC, NBC, and CBS, and that was it. And you watched those games on Sunday because there was nothing else to do. Everybody watched the Super Bowl. Now you don't have to watch the Super Bowl because there's a Puppy Bowl and there's Lifetime having a marathon that teaches you to hate men. They do all of that stuff. You've got all of these things to watch. And my kids don't have to watch it because there's always something they can watch. It's like Bruce Springsteen had a song in 1991, 57 channels and nothing on. Well, there's nothing on, but you don't have to watch football. The reason I became a Pirates fan is because they were on every night in Johnstown. Almost every away game, they were on because the Pirate Network was on the NBC channel. You weren't watching NBC. You weren't watching Chips because you were watching the Pirates. And guess what? I'm not watching Knight Rider. I want to watch the Pirates. The Steelers were a family thing. Everybody gathered, and there was nothing else for anybody to do. It was there. So people grew up loving it. Now my kids aren't exposed to it because they don't have to.
Bring it up, Jeff, because I want to talk about it.
Kathy gives us $2 and says, fingers crossed, fans in the stands in 2021 will help. Is that what you're going to talk about, Dave?
Well, I don't know if she means help within the Pittsburgh Steelers and everything, which I agree with that. But if you're talking about the question we're talking about is getting younger viewers and everything else, absolutely that will help. And also, you have to remember the majority, not all, because we still have it on our website where Kevin Smith talks about his season. There was not really any high school football and youth league football and things like that this year that help to engage, young kids with the game to then they'll want to even watch it on TV. So that if you're ever going to do something like this might be the year to do it because, as a kid, I remember, every Friday night I was at the local high school, watching the game, waiting for them to score, for them to throw little plastic footballs into the stands, or even better, you go underneath the stands and the people that can't catch them, they fall through, and then you can gather up a bunch of them. So, and the cheerleaders couldn't throw them very well, so you knew they were going to end up down there anyway. So, I digress. At least you didn't learn how to hate men, right on Lifetime. So. That is a problem overall with the game. So I understand that they did it. I didn't see that there was any harm in it.
Oh no, there's no harm in it. I said that. I will say this: if the NFL wants to get local kids involved, you know what you do? If a game isn't going to sell out, you get extra tickets. You take them to the Boys and Girls Club, and you say you want to go to a game for free. You want to go to a game for free. Get butts and seats because those kids can never afford to go to a game. Mm-hmm. Tickets are ridiculously expensive. I couldn't take my kids to an NFL game. I have 5 kids. You know how much money that would cost me? Hell, the Pirates suck, and I can't take them to a Pirates game. It's so expensive. I mean, come on. Like this is also something you got to think about too. Like the NFL, you see these stadiums like Jacksonville, they never fill out. Oh my gosh, give the tickets away. Give them away. Give them to the kids and get them to the game, and they'll fall in love with the game once they're there. Because seeing it in live action. It's just like hockey. Everyone says, I hate hockey. Go to a game live. Go to an NHL game live. You'll fall in love with the sport because it's totally different. Okay, I digress. Division round picks. You all ready? We're going to go through this quick. Here we go. Los Angeles, I hate these times. They're stupid times. 4:35. Los Angeles Rams, this is Saturday. Go to the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are giving 6.5, over under 45.5. Bryan, who you taking?
I think the Packers are going to have 45 on their own. I don't care how good the Rams defense is. Aaron Rodgers is in that zone. This is a free pass for them. The Rams offense is not the same. Jared Goff, his thumb is still hurting. He did not even look good when he came into that game for Wolford. So what I'm saying is, go ahead. You give away 6. That's it. My gosh. I mean, give away 16. Packers are going to roll.
Dave?
I don't think the Packers are going to roll. I think they'll win and I think they'll cover, but I'm calling an under because the strength of the Rams is their defense, and therefore I just think it'll be a lower scoring game. Did you even expect the Rams to get here this week? A lot of people did not. I mean, our picks were straight Seattle last week, so I wouldn't count the Rams out, but the Packers did get to. The question is, are they going to rest up and come out strong, or are they going to pull a Pittsburgh Steelers and start slow and next thing you know, they can't catch up?
I've got the Packers struggling a little bit. They're going to win. They're going to cover, but I have the under of 45.5. Next game at 8:15, the Baltimore Ravens are getting 3 on the road against the Buffalo Bills with an over-under set at 50 even. Bryan, who do you like?
I'm going to go ahead and take the under in this game, and you can give Baltimore 3 points. You don't have to. They're going to win this game straight up.
Money line. I like it. Okay, what about you, Dave?
I'm taking the over in this one because if the Browns are going to score in the 40s against the Ravens in that Monday night game, this could very well be another shootout. That this could be that because I do feel that the Bills' offense is legit. So I'll go a little bit with my heart on this one, and I'll take Buffalo and then the over.
Wow, so Buffalo giving 3. I'm going to take the Ravens getting 3 on the road. If they lose, I think it's going to be really close. But I think Lamar Jackson, he got off finally got off the schneid, got that first playoff win. I think that he'll be fine. And I'm taking the over in this game. I'm taking the over hard, over 50.
I might go back to the under because I forgot that there's a possibility of a snowstorm going over in this game. And Lamar's never played in snow, so
okay,
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and then Sunday at not 3, not 3:10, not 3:05, folks. Cleveland Browns go to Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round are giving 10. And the over-under is set at 57. Bryan, who you got?
First of all, if it was me setting the game, it would be at 3:07. Because
yes,
those are the times that I like. This is a weird game for me because I really think that the Chiefs are going to win this game by maybe about 10, but I don't see it being a blowout. I just see them beating them. I think the Chiefs. I know Mahomes has a couple weeks off. I just think they are primed and ready for the playoffs to defend that title. I don't think rust is going to set in. I think the Browns, they beat Pittsburgh straight up. There were no excuses. You can't blame the refs. You blame the Steelers for that loss. I still think the Browns are not that strong of a team. They caught the Pittsburgh Steelers at the right time and capitalized on all of the mistakes. Kansas City's not making those mistakes.
Dave?
Yeah, personally, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are ripe for the picking right now. I mean, I don't feel that they have looked that – everyone talks how they were such a big juggernaut. I'm sorry, but yeah, they lost in week 17 when they rested Mahomes and stuff, but they still only put up 17 on the Atlanta Falcons the week before. So you're talking about when Pittsburgh was winning ugly during their win streak, the narrative was, oh, they're just not really all that good. but then Kansas City gets to where they're winning, not definitively. I mean, yeah, like they beat the Dolphins by 6, but look at what the Bills did against the Dolphins when the Dolphins needed to win to make the playoffs. They beat the Saints by 3, but the Saints weren't playing all that great at the time. And I mean, they're just getting by Denver. They barely got by the Bucks. I mean, they barely got by the Raiders. This is all since their bye week. The biggest win they have had since the bye week was 6 points, and against a bunch of teams that did not make the postseason. So I think the Chiefs are ripe for the picking. That is why I was so disappointed in the Pittsburgh Steelers, the fact that they did not win this game against the Browns, because I wanted to see Baltimore go in there, and I think Baltimore would have handed it to them if that was the matchup this weekend. Because when teams rest their starting quarterback in Week 17 and have the first round bye in the last 15, 16 seasons, they have losing records. So I think that the Chiefs are vulnerable, but playing against the Browns, I don't think that's going to be a good one for them. So therefore, I'm going to pick the Browns to cover, but I think the Browns are probably going to win or be ahead a lot of the game, but then the Chiefs are just going to come back and get it at the end.
Sorry if I cut you off there, Dave.
Sorry,
you were breaking up a little bit. It was me. It wasn't you. I'm going to take the Chiefs. Okay. I'm going to take the Chiefs to win and cover. I think it's going to be close early, but I think the Chiefs are just going to steamroll them over. I'm taking the over 57, and again, over hard on this one. In the last game, 640, not 642, Bryan. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, third time's a charm against the New Orleans Saints. The Saints won both meetings in the regular season. Tampa Bay's getting 3, and the over-under's at 52. Bryan, who you got?
I actually have the Buccaneers winning this game on the road. I think they're ready.
All right. Dave?
I'm going Saints because we saw what happened. You could say that it wasn't, I mean, that game last week, it wasn't ever really close. But you're finally getting Breeze, Kamara, Thomas all together. You didn't have it all season. You're getting it now for the postseason. I'm taking the Saints, and let's go over on that one too.
I am going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, believe it or not, getting 3 on the road. They might not win straight up, but I like them getting points, and I'm going to take the under of 52. For some reason, my gut tells me not going to be a high-scoring game as many might think. That's who I've got. So for me, I've got Tampa Bay, Green Bay in the NFC Championship game versus the Ravens and the Chiefs. That would be pretty interesting if that were to pan out. Bryan, you had who in the championship games?
I've got the same thing. I've got Tampa and Green Bay, and I have the Ravens taking on the Chiefs.
All right, Dave, what about you?
And then mine is Green Bay and New Orleans and the Bills taking on the Chiefs.
All right, very good. Last thing, trivia time. Go ahead, Dave. Take it away.
Okay, we are talking. What was this show all about? What did we talk about for the longest time other than Nickelodeon?
Randyland.
Talk about Randyland.
Coaches.
We're going to talk about offensive coordinators of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh,
because the Pittsburgh Steelers are known for having only 3 head coaches in the last, how many years is it now? I should be being the math guy, I should know that
69.
Right. I mean, it's 50 years, more than 50 years, because longer than I've been alive. So, but coordinators aren't the same. Do you guys know the first year the Pittsburgh Steelers officially had an offensive coordinator?
I will go ahead and say, let's say, I'm just going to throw out a guess here. 75. Was it Tom Moore?
I
Jeff
don't know.
Hartman?
I don't know. I'll go with what he said.
The first year the Pittsburgh Steelers officially had on staff an offensive coordinator was 1983. It is Tom Moore, but it was 1983.
Wow.
Who was who called the plays? It was Chuck Noll.
TB did too. Terry Bradshaw called plays too.
Yeah. So I mean, but really, he basically calls his own plays, but it It was Chuck Noll that was setting everything up. So, yeah, it hasn't been nearly as long as head coaches. How many offensive coordinators have they had in that time from 1983? You could probably even start. You could probably count backwards if you think you can name them, but you don't have to name them. I'm just asking for a number.
Brian's writing them down.
Well, you know what? I can go backwards for pretty much a long time with this team. If we go Randy, then we go Haley, Arians, Wisenhunt,
Malarkey.
Gosh, I'm getting lost in the Malarkey came around.
Wasn't Chan Gailey there for a little bit?
Gailey, Ray Sherman, Kevin Gilbride was around 97. Ron Earhart was in the mid 90s. He was on that Super Bowl team, Earhart. Before that, I guess Tom Moore, and I think that's it. Am I missing somebody?
I'm going to say we missed 12.
And if Bryan sticks with his 10, you guys would split the difference. It is 11. 1. It was Joe Walton in 1990 and 1991.
Joe Walton, yeah.
All the rest of them, fantastic job. I'm going to ask you one last question about it to let it go. Who had the best winning percentage out of all of them?
Todd Haley.
I'd have to say Ron Earhart.
That would be one Ken Wisenhunt.
The Wiz.
Yeah, that makes sense.
70.8 was 34-14 from 2004 to 2006, and he was 5-1 in the playoffs.
He always had that trick play ready. He always knew when to run the gadget. All right, gentlemen, final thoughts here. Let's call it a show. Brian, go ahead.
Wow, it has been a fantastic show just talking about the coaches. I mean, it kind of feels like a Paul is gone. You know, a cloud has been lifted with Randy gone. I mean, like I said, doesn't take away from Randy the man. We're just talking about Randy the land and Randy the coach, and did not like what he was doing to this offense. Didn't like the hire when it happened way back in 2018. So with that being said, I'm hoping that this is a transition that the Steelers do well. We've seen them do pretty well with personnel and bringing guys in. I just hope they do it right, and I'm looking forward to a lot of action. And I got to tell you, watching the Slack channel today with Dave, Michael Beck, and Jeff Hartman going crazy when they're like, not another one, because they're like, okay, I've got to write this. Who's writing in this? And it was great because these guys are like, my gosh, I've got other things to do. So, I mean, there's so much action, and it's just a testament to what we do. If I could pat all of us on the back, what we do at BTSC, we make sure you get it first. And these guys got on right away on the podcast network. We had it all on there on the editorial side. It's great to see. Just because the Steelers aren't playing doesn't mean that we're not playing.
True. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, my favorite line of the day that I said, Jeff, you've got to say that on the show, was the Randyland has gone the way of the log jammer. That was my favorite one. But all I have to say is this. We were supposed to be previewing a divisional round matchup tonight. A week ago,
Yep.
That's what we thought we would be doing tonight. That's what we hoped we would be doing tonight. And we were not. And then when we did the post-game show, the most disheartening thing about it is you didn't have that hope for the 2021 season. There are so many free agents. There's so many bad contracts. You don't know what kind of the players they're doing. The coaches continue to do the same old thing year after year and hope that it works and things like that. And honestly, I didn't have a lot of hope for the Steelers in 2021. To me, this changes everything. This shows me now, could they get in guys that are worse? Absolutely, they could. I mean, I don't know. It would be kind of hard, in my opinion, to find someone worse. But it's the whole notion that the mindset is we are not settling anymore. We are not, the standard is the standard. I thought the standard was going to be mediocrity. We don't want that to be the standard. That they are actually doing what they have to do to change things up. to move forward. And I am hopeful and excited about everything to come in this 2021 offseason, leading into next fall. That will be a whole new Steelers team, and we'll see kind of what they're doing.
If you want my take on the off season coming up, that's the headline of my podcast for tomorrow. Let's Ride. I'm going to plug that and have you check that out. All I'm going to say is, sorry, folks, park's closed. Randyland is officially shut down. It's done. Dunzo. Celebrate. Dave, why don't you send us out?
Wait, real quick. Moose should have told you outside.
Sorry, folks. Park's closed. Go ahead, Dave, one more time.
Hey.
There we go.